apologies? No apologies. No apologies. Okay, thank you. And can I ask if there have been any, or there are any declarations of interest in respect of any items on today's agenda? No. Thank you very much.
Just to point out, though, on the report on leader, one of the organisations that they've assessed is Perth and Ross Countryside Trust, where I'm a trustee, so I'll probably not say anything on that. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Morning. Okay, now before we proceed with today's agenda, can I just have my own apology to say that unfortunately this meeting is not being recorded today due to, believe it or not, malfunctioning IT. Oh, it is? Oh, it is? Oh, right, it's been sorted. Excellent, good. We're pleased about that.
Convener, could I ask for a vote of thanks to be recorded to our excellent staff who seem to make great progress with a system that seems to have built-in gremlins. I hope that's on record.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Okay, in that case, moving on to the minutes of the last meeting on the 7th of November. Are there any inaccuracies or any matters arising from these minutes? Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you. Yes, very much so. On page 7 of 84, on section 656, the internal audit update. At the last meeting, I'd referred to the 2 out of 5 contracts that had not been notified to Public Contracts Scotland within the appropriate time limit, and asked how much out of time they were, and so on. I'm grateful to Jackie Clark and also to Mary Mitchell for getting back to me. I think other members of the Audit Committee know this, but I think it should go on record that 2 out of 5 were indeed not notified to Public Contracts Scotland. And of those, just to get my facts right, one was for £108,500, and that wasn't notified for 15 weeks. And the one that rings even more alarm bells, slightly lower value, was £85,400, and that wasn't notified for 28 weeks. And I think that does ring alarm bells, clearly. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Donaldson, and that is noted. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Can I ask for approval of these minutes? Agreed. Thank you.
Convener, was Councillor Donaldson's intervention to correct the minute or as a matter arising? I'm not quite clear about that.
It's a matter arising.
Yes, it's a matter arising.
It's just a place on record. I thought it was necessary so to do.
Thank you. Moving on to item 4 on the agenda, which is the internal audit follow-up. And Jackie, can I ask you to speak to this report, please?
Thank you, Convener. The report contains the appendices, which gives the details of those actions which were due to have been completed by the end of October last year, which have yet to be completed, along with the reasons as to why there has been a delay or why the action's not being taken forward. I think the appendices are reasonably self-explanatory from Appendix 2 onwards. Appendix 1 gives a breakdown of all actions that are outstanding from internal audit reports. The Table 1 is those items which have yet to reach the dates that have been agreed for their completion, and Table 2 is those which have already passed their originally agreed completion date. Of those 23, 14 have previously been in front of the Audit Committee for your consideration and have got a date at some point after October. I'm happy to take any questions, or service representatives may be able to assist if you've got any questions about the content of the appendices.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. Are there any questions on that report? Councillor Wilson.
He's nearly Wilson, but not quite.
You're very similar.
My questions on Appendix 1, page 13. First of all, I have several questions. Will I just take them one at a time?
Yep, thank you.
All on the table 1, all services, it looks as if the number of outstanding items is now 48, and it was 39 last year. Am I reading that correctly?
That's correct, yes. There were 39 actions from the previous report, but as of this report, there are 48 outstanding actions.
So, Convener, the number of outstanding items is growing, and growing quite substantially in overall terms. Is there a trend or a reason for that?
No. The reason for that, Councillor, is because of the audit of the reports that are on the agenda. As we're now up to staffing and more reports coming through, the number of actions, it is likely that the number of actions will increase, and that's right and proper because we're getting through the workload now.
Thank you. Okay. I'm on to Appendix 2 on page 15 now, Convener. I can understand the conclusion on this in a way, because there is a long stop process for the council considering individual situations where councillors are unwell for a long period of time. But was that the issue at the time? Because I don't think that, from memory, I don't think that was the issue. I think long-term illness, which can be dealt with under standing orders and the processes of the council, I don't think that was the issue. Or have I got that wrong? I'm happy to be correct.
What do you think was the issue?
Well, it says in the summary here, the arrangements for councillors to declare any periods of ill health which result in their being unable to attend their duties. Well, that was just maybe for a couple of months. The arrangements that are referred to in the status oblique explanation section are where somebody's likely to be absent for over 6 months. The head of legal and governance can correct me on that, but
no, that's correct.
so I just wonder if the two issues were the same, or my memory was that the bit on the left of the report was relating to short-term absence, and the bit on the right was relating to long-term absence.
The bit on the left related to all absences and wasn't restricted to either short or long-term. It was about having a process in place for all absences, which resulted in an elected member being unfit to undertake their duties. At the time, it was Gillian Taylor who was considering this and taking this forward, but I believe that she had a conversation with Lisa Simpson about this. I don't know whether you want to take that on.
I think the issue that had been highlighted was that elected members are not subject to the same maximising attendance policy, strict policy that employees are, and it was whether or not it was appropriate to consider that type of policy for the management of elected members. We have looked at that, and actually, given the nature of your job, it would be impossible to do. You don't work set hours, you're not supposed to be in a specific place at any particular time. The only regulation around ill health and non-attendance is the rules around statutory, the standing orders around non-attendance for more than 6 months. The way that we manage, obviously, people who are having shorter term periods of ill health, that's dealt with by your business being covered by substitutes or proxies, and we have an informal discussion as committee services and member support to manage that and support you as best we can. But we didn't actually think that we could develop an appropriate procedure around that other than stick to the clear rules that are set out in standing orders about long-term absence. So it was a pragmatic decision based on that we couldn't find a process, develop a process that would fit all.
Convener, thank you for the answer. I much appreciate that, and I totally agree with the reasoning behind it, and I'm surprised this was even on the agenda in the first place.
Thank you. Any further questions on this report? Okay, can I take the... You've got the microphone now, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Appendix 3, the page 17. I'm looking at the action plan paragraph, the big paragraph there on the left of the page, and my notes last night were, what does this really mean? Because the language there is not, I don't find it terribly easy to understand. It looks like a construction of, not buzzwords, but council speak that's added together with one or two other words that I do understand. And one of the tests, if somebody, an intelligent person walking off the street were to read this, they would wonder what that was. And if I'm wondering what it's all about in detail, then shouldn't we be a bit more transparent about what we're actually saying? When we talk about a matrix, using the Audit Scotland matrix, etc. Okay.
Okay, I think you've you made your point. Jackie, do you have a response?
Thank you, Councillor. One of the reasons that the report now contains the hyperlink to the original report is to enable members to look back, and to enable members of the public also to look back at what the original report was saying. So it makes it puts it into the bigger context. To actually replicate the entire action plan along with an update, I think would look very cumbersome for members. For most of the time, it's quite straightforward on what the action is. On this occasion, it is a complicated action because it's a follow-on action from what was 1.2 of the original audit report. So by following the link, which is at the top of there, that 1623 personalisation, that would provide you with more information about the context. In this particular case, as I said, this is a second part of an action, the first part of which was to take account of any Scottish Government guidance and to complete an Audit Scotland matrix, which was provided for personalisation. And that's referenced within the detail of the action point in the original audit report. I can certainly see why you would think that it does look quite a strange action, but it does really need to be seen in the context of the original report.
Thanks.
I think it's important as well to point out that the full report is accessible via the link at the top, so it's.
I understand that completely, and I'm grateful for the explanation of the process. However, I do think that the summaries could be written in plain English.
What's provided here is not a summary, it's an extract from the actual report, so that it doesn't, so that in most cases it doesn't lose what the original action was. Now in this case I can see that it is quite complicated, and what the action was to ensure that as a council we had an overarching council-wide consistent approach and strategy or policy for personalisation, which we haven't got. That covers both services which would deal with this. And the status and explanation really hoped to provide a bit of explanation. But what we're looking for is what was required in Scottish Government guidance, which is a council-wide policy or strategy.
I think as well, what I would add is I take on board your point, Councillor Wilson, that it is and can be on occasion difficult to read the comments either under action, especially under action plan, and really grasp what's going on by reading that on its own. And I think somehow, and we've spoken about this previously, the structure of this report in particular, and looking to improve upon it going forward. And when we have, I think when we have our offline review of the whole operations of the audit committee later on in the year, then that would be an opportunity for us all to share our views in terms of the general structure of these reports. I personally find the Appendix 1 it takes me a bit of doing to get my head around the numbers and exactly what the message is there. But I think it's our collective responsibility to try and come up with something that is better than what we have here, if we think that there is anything that's better.
Convener, thank you for the additional explanation and also your intervention. I'm simply making a request, which I don't think is an unreasonable one, that we try and write the summary in plain English. There's an example of fairly plain English in Appendix 4, where in the status explanation, although it's a technical matter, I can read that and I can understand it. So it's quite possible to do it. I'm not expecting War and Peace, a half a page even of stuff. I think we just need to get a grip of this.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, and it is noted. You know, we should be able to read these pages in isolation and understand what's happening. So thank you for that, Councillor McDade.
Thank you, Convener. My question is about Appendix 5 on page 21. It's in relation to Action Plan 1416 housing repairs. This is a particularly stubborn action where it has been running on for years. My question is in relation to, it says in the staff's explanation that the standard repairs work is scheduled to be complete on 8th of January 2019. So the first question is, has this been completed? And then it goes on to say that it should be fully rolled out by the 31st of March. I want to know if we're still on track for that.
Okay. Fraser, are you able to help on that?
Certainly happy to answer that. In terms of the first question, yes, we're complete by the 8th of January, and similarly we're on track for the 31st of March.
Thank you. Any further questions on this report? Okay, can I take the report as approved? Yep. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is the item 5, and that is the internal audit update. And again, Jackie, I'd ask you to briefly summarise the content of this report and the appendices.
Thank you, Convener. Work has continued on the internal audit plan since the last committee, and indeed since the report was finalised. There's been further developments with reports progressing to draft stage, and other assignments briefs having been approved, and work commenced on a number of audits. As it stands at the moment, based on the additional work that's been undertaken, we are on track to complete the audit plan by the end of the financial year, by the end of March. From Appendix 1, those reports appear on the agenda today, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. And you know, what I would say is that as brought out in Appendix 2, you'll see that what we're seeing is the catch-up, I think, following the coming up to full complement of the audit team, and that outstanding reports are gradually being brought up to date, and between our next two meetings, effectively in March and May, it is hoped and expected that the full audit plan for this financial year will be completed and reported on. So with that, are there any questions, Councillor McDade? Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. So just a couple of things. There's a number that were due to come, originally anticipated to come in January 2019. So the ALIOs, workforce planning, welfare reform, and none of them are here with us today, obviously. But there is some that have been rephased forward, as it were, such as GDPR, which was originally to come in May and is now coming in March. So I'm just wondering if there's a bit of rephasing going on here, and that's why we're seeing the ones due to come originally in January have been moved back. But then, yeah, so that's sort of my question, really.
Yes, Councillor, there has been some rephasing of work based on our own resources and also accessibility with services. But as has been said, you know, we're on track to complete, and the majority should be with the audit committee by May this year.
and we're still on track to complete all of it within this audit year.
Yes, we are.
Thank you.
Councillor Donaldson.